Hello and welcome to my latest career video. Now this career video features Jacob Soldier Bartfield, who had an enormous career and a very, very tough career indeed. He has one of the from amongst the, I'll say, non-Hall of Famers and champions, he has probably one of the best resumes or toughest resumes out there. So let us go through his career, starting with his major opponents, and he has many. So on slide one, Jacob Bartfield fights former middleweight champion Al McCoy on 4 occasions, scoring 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. He also fights a 5-fight series with Perry Graves, scoring 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. And then he has an 8-fight series, with the boxing marvel Jack Britton, scoring 2 wins with 5 losses and 1 draw. Already there's nearly 20 fights there against those 3 opponents. He then has a 5-fight series, with former middleweight champion Mike O'Dowd, an excellent fighter in his time. Bartfield loses all 5 of those fights. He also loses to former champion Mike Glover in a singular fight, before then fighting Ted Kid Lewis on 6 occasions. Scoring 2 wins with 2 losses and 2 draws. Next up is Harry Greb. You go through Soldier Bartfield's resume and you look at the list of names he fought and the amount of times he fought him, and it's just like really bizarre. And then you look at fighters now who claim they have really, really tough resumes, and it just don't quite seem to match. So he fought Harry Greb 5 times, scoring 1 win with 3 losses and 1 draw. He also fought and defeated former middleweight champion Billy Papke, before then also having 4 fights against the ghetto wizard himself, Benny Leonard, losing all 4 fights. A singular fight Soldier Bartfield had with Johnny Wilson was a loss, and he twice fought former middleweight champion Dave Rosenberg, suffering a loss and fighting a draw from that 2-fight series. Next up, the toy bulldog Mickey Walker, whom Bartfield fought in a trilogy of fights, losing all 3. He then lost to former champion Jimmy Jones in a singular fight, before losing to former light heavyweight champion and Hall of Famer Jimmy Slattery, also in a singular fight. And to close out this rather insane first slide of main opponents, he fought a trilogy against the St. Paul Phantom Mike Gibbons, scoring 1 win with 2 losses and no draws. Wow, what a crazy first slide. The amount of fights on that slide against top opposition is incredible already. Stupid numbers of fights. So let us go on to our next slide, where he fights the excellent Sergeant Sammy Baker in a singular fight, suffering a defeat. He then repeats that singular fight with a defeat against the fighter I covered yesterday, Jock Malone, before then fighting excellent top 10 contender with a very tough career himself, Frankie Shawell, on 2 occasions, suffering 2 defeats. He then loses 2 fights from 2 against Bermondsey Billy Wells, before then fighting and losing to Georgie Ward. Next up is a draw to Mel Coogan, and then he fights Young Ahern in a trilogy, suffering defeats in all 3 fights. Next up, David Kurtz, who Bartfield fought on 4 occasions, winning all 4 fights. He then fights and defeats tough contender Willie Fitzgerald in a singular fight, before losing to Eddie Revoir. Next up, Willie Brennan, the former middleweight contender. Bartfield fights him on 4 occasions, scoring no wins with 1 loss and 3 draws. And then he has a 5-fight series, with Jack McCarran, the excellent middleweight contender, who himself beat multiple Hall of Famers. I'll be covering him if I haven't already. His career is a bit of an eye-opener. Bartfield scored 3 wins with 2 losses from that 5-fight series. Then he had 11-fight series with tough journeyman contender Italian Joe Gans, who himself had a very tough career. Bartfield scored 4 wins with 4 losses and 3 draws, so kind of splitting the series against Italian Joe Gans of nearly a dozen fights. He then defeats Walter Moore twice from 2 fights, and then fights Lockport Jimmy Duffy, the sheriff, on 2 occasions, scoring 1 win, 1 loss and no draws. So another crazy slide with another crazy number of fights. But we have another slide to go. So on this slide, we see he fights the Ever present amongst most good resumes of the time, Jackie Clark. Bartfield loses to him. He then fights excellent middleweight contender Brian Downey on 3 occasions, scoring 1 win with 2 losses and no draws. Next up is KO Willie Loughlin. Bartfield fights him to a draw in a singular fight. He then fights Battling Ortega on 2 occasions, scoring no wins, 1 loss and 1 draw. Bartfield then defeats Frank Barriou. Now, Johnny Tillman is next. Bartfield fights him to a draw. He then fights 2 fights against Lou Bogash, suffering a loss and fighting to a draw. He then defeats Phil Krug and Jack Perry in singular fights, before then losing the final 2 names on here. The first is to Bruno Frattini in a singular fight, and the second is to Harry Galfond. So that is a massive number of fights there. That is 106 fights listed there. Soldier Bartfield won 30 of them, lost 58, and when you factor, 3 losses to Mickey Walker, 3 to Harry Greb, 2 to Ted Kid Lewis, 2 to Mike Gibbons. When you actually go through the Hall of Famers, a lot of those defeats are also to Hall of Famers, a lot of them. He fought a whole number of Hall of Famers a lot of times. So he scores 38 wins with 58 losses and 18 draws. That is a tough career. That is what you really call a tough resume. So on we go to the first of the stat slides. Now, Soldier Bartfield also has some crazy stats in certain areas. Now, he scored 34 knockouts, 16 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round. Now, Bartfield never scored a KO against a champion, Hall of Famer or pound for pounder. He also scored 0 KOs against rated fighters. And when we go to his rounds boxed, he hits a total of nearly 2,000, approaching 2,000, with a massive total of career rounds of 1,964. Now, Bartfield fought a total of 54 title fight rounds, and he fought 433 rounds against champions. He fought 311 rounds against Hall of Famers, and he fought a total of 331 rounds against pound for pounders. Now, for a mainly pre-rating era fighter, what numbers Bartfield would have got in these 3 categories had ratings been around, is up for the fairies, because his numbers would have been astronomical. Now, his heavily reduced numbers against top 10 fighters is 193 rounds. His massively reduced number against top 3 fighters is 113 rounds, and his number against ring champions is 105 rounds fought. Again, those 3 numbers at the bottom would be astronomical had we had full ratings for his career. So, showing his experience against top-rated opposition. So when we go to the champions, Bartfield has a colossal total of 47 fights against champions, one of the highest totals in my entire database, with 10 wins, 30 losses and 7 draws. He defeated 6 individual champions. He defeated Al McCoy, Perry Graves, Jack Britton, Ted Kid Lewis, Harry Greb and Billy Papke. He scored knockouts over 0 champions individually, but he has a ridiculous record against champions. When we go against the Hall of Famers, we see sky-high numbers again. Bartfield has 35 fights against Hall of Fame fighters with a record of 7 wins, 24 losses and 4 draws. The 5 Hall of Famers he defeated individually were Jack Britton, Mike Gibbons, Ted Kid Lewis, Harry Greb and Billy Papke. Incredible names beaten there, and he scored 0 knockouts over Hall of Fame fighters individually, so he has knocked out 0 Hall of Famers. So when we go on to the final slide, the pound for pound slide, we see he has a match in 35 fights, including as the Hall of Fame category, with 7 wins, 24 losses and 4 draws. He defeated the same 5 pound for pounders who were also Hall of Famers: Jack Britton, Mike Gibbons, Ted Kid Lewis, Harry Greb and Billy Papke, and Bartfield scored knockouts over 0 pound for pound rated fighters individually. So, monumental career, Soldier Bartfield. He's not an all-time great to me, but what he is, he's one of the all-time great. Tough man is the wrong word I'm looking for. A passing of the torch kind of fighter, where if you fight him, many fighters in Bartfield's time, and when you go back over accounts, some managers treat Bartfield as like the acid test. You know, if they had a big rising contender, they'd say, well, is he ready for someone like Bartfield? Oh, we're not sure. You know, because many would go in with Bartfield when they weren't ready and would get beat. Okay, some could go in with Bartfield, and if they got a good result and won convincingly, they were then seen as, oh, they can go all the way because they've beaten Bartfield. He was like one of those crossover men from the rising ranks to the top level. He was a very tough guy in terms of, you know, his capabilities as a fighter. Okay, he could beat all-time greats. He beat three of my top 10 all-time greats amongst the Hall of Famers he's beaten. 3 of my top 10 of all time Bartfield has held wins over. Scored a number of wins, you know, 2 against Lewis, 2 against Britain, 1 against Harry Greb. So, you know, he's a very capable fighter. So let us go on. Okay, we now go to the rated opponent slide now. Again, this number, Bartfield would be past 100, I have no doubt, in terms of real top 10 rated fighters. But sadly, with the rating era coming in later on, okay, he only has 21. Of course, a lot of them towards the end of his career. So he has a record of 1 win, 19 losses and 1 draw. He also has 14 fights against top 3 rated fighters, including 1 win, 12 loss, 1 draw. And he has 12 fights against ring champions, including 1 win, 10 loss and 1 draw. He defeated 1 individual rated fighter and scored knockouts over 0 individual rated fighters. So on we go to the title fight slide now. Bartfield had 4 title fights. Okay, he lost all 4 of those fights, so he has no title defences and no title fight KOs. He scored 0 wins, thus obviously against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters and ring champions in title fights, and he has 0 wins against champions, Hall of Famers and pound for pounders in title fights. So that just leaves the titles 1 slide, okay, and obviously for Bartfield, he captured no world titles, no lineal titles, or no undisputed titles. So there is Jacob Soldier Bartfield, one of the passing of the torch fighters who many young contenders would come up against and get beat pretty badly, some of them. Others could beat him and then go on to bigger things. Others would become some of the greatest fighters of all time. He fought many others while they were at the top. You know, he just has an incredibly tough career, and he acquitted himself well considering the insane level of opposition that he actually fought. You know, when his first slide ends on Mike Gibbons, after all those fights on that slide, including 6 against Ted Kid Lewis, 5 against Greb, 3 against Gibbons, you know, you just go, it's just insanity what he did. And you know, even to get the number of wins he got, like nearly a third from his overall total on major fights, considering his opposition, is impressive enough in itself. So there is Jacob Bartfield. Okay, more videos coming over the time to come. I am the Boxing Librarian, and I'm out for now.